Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Secrets to Attracting Secure Love. I am Taryn Newton-Gill, if you don't know me yet. And we are here today because maybe you are wondering why you have a pattern of attracting people who either don't want to fully commit to you, who ghost you, who string you along, or that you get in a situationship with, what I also like to call relationship limbo, where it feels like you're together-ish, but you're not actually defining the relationship. You don't actually know if they're seeing other people, things like that, right? It's a little messy. Or you're in an actual relationship and maybe it even is defined. It doesn't feel right. Like maybe you're having to sacrifice a lot of your own needs to keep that relationship going, or you're constantly worried if you're going to be upsetting the other person or making them uncomfortable. So all of these things come from specific reasons. And so those are the 3 secrets we're going to talk about today, why you're attracting people in situations like this. So with all that said, let's start. Secret number 1 to attracting secure love is to take a deep dive into your attachment style. Why? Because this was exactly my problem. I was moving through the dating world with an anxious attachment style, and I kept attracting these types of people because I was anxious and I was insecure myself. So if we think about the law of attraction, we are attracting insecure people because we ourselves are insecure. And the scientific reason for this is because our nervous system has actually been programmed to be more comfortable with people who are also insecure, because that's the impression and the programming that was given to us from our caregivers, from early experiences. And so we become familiar, and humans like what's familiar. And so this is how it starts, is that our brain has literally formed to feel comfortable with the energy and the felt experience of interactions with insecure people. And so we end up being attracted to each other. This is why it's so hard sometimes to see what's really going on in a situation when you don't know your attachment style, because you're not able to see those patterns. And so I always say that learning your attachment style is like going through the world with blurry vision and then suddenly getting a pair of glasses. Everything is suddenly more clear. It comes into focus. And for those of you who know your attachment style already, maybe you remember the first time you learned what your attachment style was, and you had that aha moment of, oh my God, you just put words to everything I felt and not understood about my life for so long. It's a really huge, impactful moment when you understand your attachment style. But how does that translate to actually having a secure relationship? And so there's 2 pieces. There's first, yes, knowing what your attachment style is and knowing the characteristics of it. But then the next piece to that is actually starting to understand your embodied attachment style. And so what I mean by that is that if a handful of us all had an anxious attachment style, right, we might all identify with certain characteristics of that style equally. But when you look at the specifics of how that attachment style shows up in our life and in our relationships, it might look different because we have different histories, different relationships that have created trauma in some way. And so we have different triggers. And it's really just all about observing that at first. It's observing it in your relationships that are romantic, but also your relationships that aren't romantic. Because a lot of the time we are showing up in secure ways in those other relationships too. Now, you may be very comfortable in certain situations, like maybe you're a boss at work or you have a leadership role. Maybe you're really comfortable with certain friends of yours. But I bet you if you start observing, you'll notice certain things in other relationships as well. For instance, a really big one for anxious attachments is that we can be people pleasers. So we tend to apologize a lot. And when you are aware of that characteristic, you can start observing in your relationships where you're apologizing a lot. Now, you might not be able to make that shift just yet. You can start to try. That's what we work towards is, okay, what do I replace there? What can I do instead of apologizing when I'm feeling this way? But it's just knowing it first so you have some awareness around it, because then when you can practice it with non-romantic relationships, then you already are prepared for it when a romantic relationship comes. So that's what I mean by really embodying it. Okay, number 2, second way to attract secure love is to surround yourself with secure people. And this is another huge reason why you're attracting insecure people, which is that, especially for those of us who maybe have grown up with parents or caretakers who were insecure themselves, who were maybe always arguing or dysfunctional, talking bad about each other, or just not being productive in their arguments. There's sometimes when you argue and you disagree, but you come to a solution. But a lot of times, if we grew up with people who are not solution oriented and they're just being insecure, you don't have any felt experience or model in your mind to refer to when you think about what it means to be secure. We manifest when we have a vision and we can really clearly see that vision, and when our heart and our body is aligned with that vision. And so if we don't have a secure model in our head, then we can't manifest that, right? Because we can't see it. We can't pull it forward. What do you do about this? So you really want to start evaluating the people in your life. And it doesn't mean you have to just start dropping people, but you want to start really paying attention. And that's the thing too, that when you really start leaning in and doing this work, and I know my clients can tell you this for sure, because a lot of them tell me this too, that you can't unsee it, essentially. Like, you start seeing all the insecurity or security around you all the time. And so I really want you to think back to, are there people in your life outside of your home? If the home was where you felt like there were insecure models, who are the people and places outside of your home? Because that's where we start to really see other ways of being in the world, right? Like, maybe you had a teacher in your past who seemed like a really good, solid person who stuck with you, who was a mentor and who treated you well and made you feel acknowledged and heard. Maybe you spent a lot of time at a friend's house and your friend's parents interacted differently than your parents did, and you really liked the way that those parents interacted. What did they do? Do you have friends who are couples and you really appreciate their relationship? You can even look to couples in movies or celebrity couples who really stand out to you, or when you're out in the world and people who you really like how they're interacting. I want you to really take note of that as an example to your subconscious brain of what security looks like and of what you want to manifest. And then in addition to that, we're never too old to make new friends. And that doesn't mean I want you to go dropping all your friends, but it's really important to surround ourselves with secure people who are going to be healing for us. This is a journey, and we want supportive people who are going to be healing for us on this journey. I don't know if you've ever heard that we are the sum of the 6 people we surround ourselves with. And so if you're surrounding yourself with only insecure people all the time, it's not surprising that you're feeling insecure, right? You're constantly going to be triggered. And so I really want you to be open and start paying attention and noticing the people in your life who feel more secure and leaning into those relationships. Because then you can start having a more felt experience yourself of what security feels like. And it starts reinforcing how you want to be treated. And you keep that fresh in your mind for when you are dating. That said, I know that there are some relationships in our lives where we have little control, or where we have to see them even though we don't necessarily want to. For instance, maybe there's a family member that is insecure and they're in our life and we don't really have control over that necessarily. That's true. You might not be able to cut someone out necessarily, but you can control who you spend the majority of your leisure time with. And you can also learn to set boundaries, which is another thing I'm always working on my clients with. That can be a more challenging piece when we have an anxious attachment style, because there's a lot of guilt that comes up with setting boundaries, but it's a practice. And so you don't just have to be with people that you don't want to be with or who aren't good for you. Life is too short to be miserable. So that's something to just start paying attention to lean into those secure people in your life and pay attention in your world when you notice someone showing up in a way that you really appreciate, or make a note of it, write it down, tell your best friend. All of that's really helpful. Secret number 3, and this is my favorite, so I'm excited to share it with you. This secret is to let go of the fantasy. Let me explain. Before you have even opened a dating app or started meeting people or started talking to someone, literally before you even interacted with this next person who you might date, you are already attached. And what you're attached to is the version of who you want in your head. And this is a very big piece, especially when we have an insecure attachment style, because a big core wound, and I'm going to talk about core wounds a lot here, or what we can call attachment wounds, which a core wound is the initial wound, the initial caregiver or parent or relationship that formed that attachment style, but you can have attachment wounds from other relationships as well. But basically, when you have a core wound of something that's insecure, what that means is that on a certain level, there's a feeling of low self-worth, which can be really confusing, especially for people who are really successful, who are really confident, who have a lot of friends. You probably know on an intellectual level, when asked, no, I'm a badass, I'm actually really awesome. And you believe it, right? But there's this emotional piece, this emotional patterning from someone not giving you the acknowledgement or the attention you needed way back when, that gave you this subconscious message that you're not worthy. And so because of that, there's this kind of desire, this subconscious desire to be validated. And validation in and of itself is not a bad thing, but this is how it can get tricky. Like, we all want to be validated by people, but when we look to people to validate our self-identity, so we're attracted to people who have qualities that we wish we had, or how we want to be seen. Like, I used to be really attracted to really artistic types who were like really well traveled and really stylish. And it wasn't even necessarily about their physical body, but it was about, I wanted to be validated by the fact that they were interested in me, right? Because I saw qualities in them that I wanted to possess. And so I was validated when they liked me back, when they found me attractive. And so what's happening is that's part of the fantasy, right? Because what we do is we compare everyone we meet to this person in our head, this fantasy idea. Maybe they're faceless, but this idea, right? And so we go after the people who match that person in our head. And what ends up happening is we often end up getting disappointed, or we stay with them because they match the fantasy, even if as we get to know them, we start intuitively realizing we don't actually like who they are. We justify it or ignore it because in our minds, we really want it to work out. But we really need to be aligned not only in our head, but in our hearts and our bodies. Relationships don't work out when we meet someone who's just like us. We don't want our twin. We actually want someone who complements us and who brings out the best in us and balances us, and vice versa, right? And so what that means is that we might have to let go of what we think we want. And we do that by being open to getting to know the person behind the profile, so to speak. Dating apps is a really good example of this. The dating apps really promote quick judgments, right? And like stereotyping people based on X, Y, or Z. And so I challenge you to ask yourself, what are the metrics you're using to decide if you like someone? What are the first things that come to mind for you? Like, what is your internal process when you are deciding if someone's right for you or not? Because a lot of the time, those are very quick, not thought out things when we feel like sometimes there's this like urgency to decide how we feel about someone immediately off the bat. There's this expectation that there's going to be a spark or an immediate connection, right? And if we don't feel that spark or immediate connection, we write them off. And that is that true love fantasy that's been promoted to us our whole lives, that idea that connection happens immediately. 5% of people fall in love at first sight. 5%, that is such a small percent. The majority of people have to get to know each other and have to build a friendship first. And so what that means is being open to the surprises. People can really surprise us in a pleasant way. People we wouldn't expect on paper to be our person show up in such a way that we end up feeling things for them we wouldn't expect. It takes getting to know them a little bit to see those pieces of them. And I try to push people a little bit outside their comfort zone in this regard, right? Because we are attached to something in our head. And so it's not always easy to let go of that, right? It's a little uncomfortable. And I talk about discomfort a lot, a little uncomfortable when we When you like see something ahead of you and you want to do it, maybe I feel like stage fright is a really good example of this, right? That's a good kind of discomfort in the sense that you know it's past the discomfort and you want it. You want that thing past the discomfort, but you have to move through the discomfort a little to get there. And that's the growth edge of discomfort, right? That's good discomfort versus bad discomfort being like, oh, this is maybe a red flag. I feel like really uncomfortable right now. I don't like it. I don't know what to do about it. I'm triggered. So there's different kinds of discomfort. For this number 3, letting go of the fantasy, there is a little discomfort, but it's a good discomfort because there are surprises possibly on the other end. All right, everyone. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.